we on? Is this on? Is this like, oh, there we go. Good morning, Paris. Hi, I'm Stephen Waterhouse, also known as Seven. I'm here to chat to you about some ideas I've had as we enter a new stage of crypto. I'm old compared to a lot of you. I got into this space 10 years ago, a little bit over 10 years ago. And it was on the back of a career in tech in San Francisco, post-acquisition, post-IPO. I ended up with a venture fund that we sold to Fortress. So suddenly I'm at a hedge fund. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing at a hedge fund? Techie guy, geeky, just no idea what I'm doing there. So I was going to leave. And so I chatted to Pete Brigger, who ran Fortress. And I said, I'm out. I'm going to go. He said, do you have any other ideas? I was like, what do you mean to have other ideas? I was like, I love many ideas. He goes, well, come back with another idea and we'll take a look at it. So I went around and chatted to some friends, and I don't know if he's here today, but a good friend of mine, Sean, said, you should try Bitcoin. I was like, oh, Bitcoin. I've been kind of busy with other things, but yeah, I'll take a look at that. I read about it sometime in Wired. So I checked out Bitcoin. I was like, this is really interesting. I could really get into this. Just made a lot of sense. I'd worked in peer-to-peer tech before, and I was like, I'm going to try this. So I went back to Pete, and I was like, hey, how about Bitcoin? He's like, great idea. We're doing it too. We've been buying a bunch of Bitcoin. This is like Feb 2013, March 2013. And over the next 6 months, together with Dan Moorhead, we incubated a team at Fortress, which eventually spun out into Dan's fund, Pantera. And we invested in some companies. Over the next 3.5 years, we invested, at least in the first fund, a bunch of these guys. And it was a very different world back then, 2013 through 2016. It was much smaller. Like, you could put the bunch of people you knew in crypto in this room. But it really also, to me, as I talk to people today and they talk about how the state's really coming for us now, the SEC's after us, all these things, it reminds me of a period back then where a couple of things happened. And it was such a small industry, and it was sort of like kind of irrelevant to a lot of people. It didn't, if you really got it, you got it. But it's like, it shouldn't have really got anyone's attention, but it did. So the beginning of this interest really was Cyprus. So Cyprus had a bailout from the European Union because it had a banking crisis from 2008, which had a hangover in Europe until 2012, 2013. And the value of Bitcoin shot up during this period of time when there was a massive bank run in Cyprus. So all of a sudden, from nowhere, from this tiny little island, there was all this interest in this thing called Bitcoin. Bitcoin actually shot up to 165, like one of the first bubbles, and back down to 50, and a lot of people thought it was over then. Subsequently shot up during that year to about 1,200, and there's more about that story then. And these were the killer apps in crypto back then. So just to give you a sense of like, why does anyone care about this stuff? So you had a very successful marketplace on the right-hand side, and then this was the largest exchange. And this was it. This was crypto back then, 2013. And yet, a bunch of bad things happen. You guys are probably familiar with these stories. It happens every few months. Something bad happens. Like, you're not alone. These things have been happening for a while. So first, in 2013, Silk Road gets seized. Then in 2013, China comes out and says, we're just going to ban this thing. And you're like, it's not that big a deal. Why are you guys banning this thing? It's not like affecting anybody. No one's being threatened. No, we're going to ban it. Like, going down. And then in 2014, Mt. Gox goes down. Interestingly, I think it was March 2014, we launched Pantera, so we were in the fire. And in March 2014, Bitstamp, where I was on the board, also became the largest exchange in the world in Bitcoin. And I'm talking like we ran Bitcoin for quite a while, most of that year. And then there was a moment there where, if you wanted to, you could kind of take down the system. You could take down Bitcoin. Yes, it would carry on running. But the banking rails were so fragile, there was only really one exchange in town. And in particular, some of the really large banks, such as JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon here, quoted in 2013 how much he likes Bitcoin. And as you can see, the bank account which Bitstamp was using was, at that point, struggling to accept other people. They're basically refusing to accept other people in Bitcoin. Bitstamp eventually got other banks. And this problem that a lot of us face in the banking world and in crypto is something that's been perennial. It's been coming along for a long time. So the state didn't just wake up and say, hey, we're going to take this thing out. And I don't want to sound like I've got paranoid conspiracy theories, but the more I spend time in the space, the more I realize that maybe these conspiracy theories are right. So they've really been after this for a while. And you kind of like look at this stuff and say, well, what's happened? What's the big deal? Well, China keeps banning it, like nth time banning it again. More recently, we've got this debanking of crypto companies, individuals. You've got Silvergate, Silicon Valley Bank. First Republic was sort of a side effect of that. You've got like market makers moving out of the US. You've got tokens getting delisted. You've got like this whole set of things happening in the US right now. You've got this like global lack of regulatory clarity, really led by the US and the SEC. And yes, Europe is better and other places are better, but yeah, there's this strong regulation by enforcement. They just don't like us. We have our own goals. Like we have to, not these are our goals, but these are like own goals as in like football. Yeah, bad and bad things happened, especially this last couple of years, and we got to do better. Like, I mean, and probably we're going to do bad things. Like, not going to do bad things, because I think things will go wrong again as this hopefully gets bigger again, and we can actually find some real traction and real-world applications. My friends at Rect have a long list of things that have gone wrong in the last couple of years. And this is reflected also. VC funding is way down. And you can interpret this on the right-hand side as like either it's about to pop up again, or maybe it's just like it's going to keep going down and we're kind of screwed. Tend to think it's going to keep coming up again, but things are tough. Things are tough out there for startups. But it's not really a bear market. This was the period of time in which, when we started Pantera till just before I left and started a different company, which I'll talk about in a minute. We just went flatline. It was like there was no activity in the space. It was just kind of, yes, Ethereum happened and so on, but like the main, kind of the big dog in town, Bitcoin, it was just dead for a long time. And there was no funding. Nothing was happening. And yet it finally kind of came back. So on the one hand, I'm kind of giving you some warnings. On the other side, I'm giving you some hope and inspiration. But on the other hand, the conspiracy theories we talked about, like finally, they're showing their cards, right? We have the sitting president of the United States with an anti-crypto tweet. On the right-hand side, challenger to the throne, Elizabeth Warren potentially, has a literal anti-crypto army. They don't like us. They really don't like us at all. They're actually coming for you. So that comes back to this. It's like, why don't we just all pivot to AI and like piss off and forget about, like leave this space and go do something else where someone's not coming for me all the time? Like, what are we trying to build? Like, why do you do this? Why does everyone just get up in the morning and say, hey, I'm going to go do more crypto? And maybe it's for the parties. I mean, the parties have got a lot better in the last 10 years, so maybe that's it. Maybe it's because you like to do difficult things. That's also a possibility. Maybe you've got a lot of friends in the space. Maybe you've been doing it so long like me, you can't think of anything else to do. Is there utopia out there? Is there something that's going to be so much better that we're going to like really build some like really beautiful, shiny world? Well, I tend to think of this stuff really in its core as like, what is crypto? Like we take this idea, it's about the decentralized nature. And when you think about what does decentralization mean, decentralized governance, and this is, you start thinking back as to why the so-called state doesn't like it. You're telling people whose job is to run things that you have techniques to decentralize how to run things. So they don't have to do anything anymore. They're not going to go, oh, that's awesome, I can go play golf. They're like, no, like, this is a terrible idea. I want to be in charge. You guys don't know what you're doing. You're going to mess the whole thing up. But this ability to disintermediate entrenched power structures, I think is incredibly important. And when you think through like the struggles that are happening outside of this beautiful city, outside of the world that most of us live in, and you think about the new uses that crypto is finding in areas of the developing world, within communication, within people trying to break through surveillance systems, there is hope. There is like a reason to get up and do this. At least I hope that is why we're all here. Maybe you just like the parties, that's also fine too. Whatever your reason is, you need to find that reason, because I don't think it's going to be particularly popular this year. Maybe it gets better next year, but these things have cycles. And so what are these killer apps? Like, what are we going for? When people ask you the killer apps, often it's like, well, we don't really have one yet, or maybe it's gaming, or maybe it's something else. I don't know, like, do we have one yet? I don't know. But we actually do have killer apps. So you kind of rewind a bit. Bitcoin has been successfully proven as a store of value. Yes, it goes up and down, I know, but it's like, it's an effective mechanism for storing wealth and for moving it efficiently in a decentralized manner. That's a huge, huge achievement. initial coin offerings, other offerings, Griff was talking about things, and the speaker before was talking about different ideas here. These are actually efficient fundraising mechanisms. You don't need to go on bended knee with your hat in your hand and kiss the ring of Silicon Valley to go get funding anymore. There are other techniques for doing this. And this is very important. This is a very, very efficient way for raising money. Decentralized finance, I don't even know where to start. There's like an incredible innovation and things that are happening there. And then, of course, digital assets and NFTs. So like, there's a series of actual killer applications that are being built. And having spent far too long in the tech space even before this, the feeling I have at this point is that this is a little bit like just before social hit, just before like Facebook came online, just before like social and mobile, just before these applications which suddenly went hockey stick upwards and exponential growth. That's the feeling I have of this space right now. Maybe this is hopium, but that's the feeling I think if you kind of like take a step back and start looking at what's happening in this room, in the conference around us. That's where I think we're at. But the state has other ideas. They want to make this happen on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side is actually fictional. It's from Mr. Robot. But there's the potential right now that if we don't get these things right, if we don't build systems that are white, that are like start getting mass adoption and start being used by people, the state will make the mass adoption. The state will take our blockchain technology and get people to use it in different ways where, maybe I don't need to explain CBDCs, ask me after this, but imagine a currency which you can move easily, which can store value, and then the state can just flip a switch, and suddenly you don't have that money anymore. Suddenly you can't buy the thing that you wanted to buy anymore. Suddenly you're locked out of your entire bank account because it's crypto. You can just do that. So, I'll go back a little bit. Probably should plug my own company, current company. So I work for Orchid. I'm co-founder and CEO. We've been looking at the idea of how to use crypto for anti-surveillance, anti-censorship technologies. Now looking to expand this beyond to a broader application suite and develop a platform. You can reach me here, and this is my company now. Any questions? I've got a couple of minutes. Thank you.
I would like to hear, based on everything that you just said, thank you very much. You did not mention CBDCs, so our governments finally opened their eyes and looked what blockchain can do for them. Talking surveillance, digital money, and where that movement is going. If you could tell us a little bit about that, would be wonderful.
Yeah, sure. So CBDCs are pretty simple. It's just everything you've learned about stablecoins and crypto so far, except that it's not decentralized. It's centralized, as in centralized digital banking currency. And so when you are centralized and you can apply discretion as to who is allowed to do what and where with their money, this is what I was mentioning, is that you end up with a completely new and advanced level of control over citizens. So hopefully you're in a democratic society and everybody gets a say, but maybe you're not. And if you're not, then the government decides what happens to you and what happens to your money. I think I have one more question. Hi.
Hey, Steve. Nice to see you again on this big stage. So my question would be, with your mission, right, to help the privacy happen, did you feel already some kind of people in governments and institutions that don't like what you do? Did you already experience hurdles on your way, and how do you cope with them?
Yeah, in the various things I've done, I've directly experienced governments and banks and there's all these kind of the same things, the state, if you like, coming for crypto and trying to shut it down directly, and sometimes almost succeeding. And like I said, initially you kind of brush these things off because you think, well, this is a one-off case, or maybe this, or maybe that, but I'm increasingly convinced that this is sort of like the final stage of crypto's journey, and I think if and when we get through this, it'll be a much different situation. Thank you.